Thanks for your introduction. Thanks for everyone for coming. The last day, the first session, the first talk. So today I'm going to talk about Facade, which is a crowdsourced verification pipeline that enables blind people to independently make home appliances accessible. So this work was done with my collaborators, Jun Kim and Tom Ye from University of Colorado Boulder, and Anthony Chen, Scott Hudson, Jennifer Mankoff, and Jeff Bigham from Carnegie Mellon University. So flat touchpads have proliferated on common appliances, making them inaccessible for blind people. Blind people cannot access these appliances because the buttons are tactually indistinguishable and the interfaces contain visual information that the blind persons cannot read. So previous work have explored using crowdsourcing to provide visual assistance to blind people. So VisVis lets people take a picture, speak a question, and get answers from the crowd pretty quickly. So we have seen a lot of questions on VisVis that people ask about using such interfaces. However, it can be quite difficult to map the description that the crowd sent back to actually using the interface. So you might want to know exactly the layout, but then they will say the stop button is in the middle of the bottom row of the buttons. So you need to go back and forth to use the interface. So last year at WIST, we presented VisVis, which is a system that uses crowdsourcing and computer vision to help blind people use inaccessible interfaces in the real world, similar to a screen reader. So here's a brief video demo. So they move their finger around on the actual interface and you will give them feedback, kind of like a screen reader. So business users, they take a picture and then it's get labeled pretty quickly by the crowd, and then computer vision is able to give them real-time feedback and guidance. So business require users to hold the phone each time they use the appliance, which is not ideal. For example, when they're cooking at home or their hands are busy and they cannot hold the phone each time they want to use it. So what they do now is, for augmenting home appliances, they often ask their sighted friends or family to help them put the braille stickers onto their home appliances. So we're wondering, how can we use crowdsourcing and digital fabrication to help with this problem? So first, to better understand how blind people currently access and accommodate inaccessible interfaces, we conducted several formative studies. We first went to the home of a blind individual and observed how she cooked the meal and used home appliances. And then we conducted semi-structured interviews with 6 blind people about their appliance use and their strategies for accommodating inaccessible interfaces. So we extracted key themes and quotes and identified 4 design requirements for a system to generate augmented physical interface for non-visual access. So first is independence. So blind people, they rely on sighted assistance for identifying the regional control and applying the label. And our solution should enable them to independently do this. And secondly, blind people have different preferences for what they want for the labeling. So, for example, like the different reading mediums, what buttons to label or not to label, etc. And the solution should enable customization. And third, because blind people cannot remember all the abbreviations and functions in one sitting when the other people is helping them, so they often only choose a very limited set of functions. And sometimes it's fine because they just only want to use a few functions, but this also limits their access. They talk about it in the interviews. And the solution should allow for learning and memorization of the interface. And finally, if the labels they apply fall off because of repeated use, and also especially in kitchen area, their hands are wet and dirty, so it fall off, they lose access immediately and they need help again. So our solution should support easy attachment and repeated easy reproduction. So these insights inform our system design. And we introduced Facade, which is a crowdsourcing fabrication pipeline to help blind people independently make physical interfaces accessible by adding a 3D printed augmentation of tactile buttons overlaying the original panel. So here's the video of a blind user using the tactile overlay produced by Facade automatically to access the microwave functionalities. And by the way, all the videos I'll be showing in this talk are live shots of blind users in our user study using the system.
5 at 30 seconds. 5. Oh, 30 seconds.
So you may wonder, how can blind people independently produce this and do this? And next I will walk you through the pipeline. So blind user first, they take a picture of the interface with the dollar bill. So the dollar bill is used as a fiduciary marker for 2 reasons. One is the Facade iOS app can use the location of the dollar bill to give them real-time feedback of how to aim the camera. And after the user takes a photo, we can warp the image to the front perspective and also retrieve size information, which is the most important. So we need to know how big the interface is, how big the buttons are. And here's a demo of how a blind user used the app to take the picture. So it's not trivial for them to take photos, so it's important to provide audio guidance for them to aim the camera. So there's a lot of work we can do to improve the audio feedback, but the strategy they are using is they first find the dollar bill and then they try to move further because the system only knows where the dollar bill is instead of knowing where the interface is. So they have that knowledge in their mind because they stick the dollar bill kind of on the left of the interface. So they move further back to make sure it's still in frame and then they turn a little bit on the right and even they will overshoot a little bit and make it back and so they take a picture. But later you can imagine you make a scan, figure out a bunch of photos, and then choose the best one with a crowd or with automatic approaches. So this image is then sent to crowd workers to annotate the interface. And Facade uses a two-step workflow to segment the area of the image that contains the interface and then label the individual buttons. So the interface text is very small, but the crowd first were asked to rate the image quality. So actually they can go, the blind users can go back and forth with the crowd to take a reasonable photo. And then they go ahead and segment the interface. So results are combined using majority vote. So one thing is to assist with the blind users later to attach the printed overlay, we ask the crowd to prop the interface area along with like a physical boundary of the interface. So later the blind user can actually feel the physical boundary and help them with the alignment. So next, the crowd workers are instructed to label the individual buttons and they draw a bounding box and they put in the text. And in this step, they work in parallel. So multiple crowd workers will see other people's labels as well. So users can then customize the shape and the labels of the buttons using the iOS app again, because so now we have the labels and then we can ask what they want. So if you see the video, it will show them a virtual version of the interface display on the phone. So this also allows for learning, so they can always go back to the phone to figure out what is the layout, and they can also customize the preferences for reading medium, word abbreviation strategies, button shapes, and whether to include the legend on the side, or etc. So the legend is also able to help them figure out what's the abbreviation and what's the word for that button. So using the crowd-generated labels and the user's preferences, Facade in general is a 3D model for a layer of tactile and pressable buttons that fits over the original control. And finally, a home 3D printer or printing service can be used to fabricate the layer. So although consumer-grade 3D printers might not be readily available in blind people's homes, there are already services out there that print can be mail-ordered. Also, we can expect that consumer-grade 3D printers will keep increasing in robustness and reduce the cost. So such a printed overlay in the lab is about less than $5 for such an overlay, and for a service like 3D Hubs, it's like $10 now, and you will get cheaper over time. So the printed overlay is designed to be easily aligned and attached to this appliance using adhesives. So in the video, the user is aligning the top edge of the overlay with the control panel and presses the buttons later on the corners to test the alignment. So this is Facade. So for the blind user, all they need to do is to attach the dollar bill, take the picture, customize their settings, and after it's printed out, they attach and use. So the other complex part of the system is hidden from the user. So Facade makes end user fabrication accessible to blind users by shifting the sighted assistance part away to a virtual crowd. Facade combines a crowd interpretation pipeline with an accessible 3D printing application. So in terms of 3D printing, it's important to figure out the most effective tactile overlay design and the material combinations, parameters. So we went through several design iterations. So in our first iteration, we used PLA plastic as the material, and we used a cone shape, try to make it easier to press because it will have a higher pressure on the back side. And then we used the bridges to connect the buttons. But in the user testing, we still found it's very hard to read and hard to push because it's still plastic, and it's very easy to break, and because the bottom contact area is small, so it's hard to attach to the interface. So in our second design iteration, we tried out different materials to try to improve attachability, pressability, and legibility. So for attachability, we used a flat and thin sheet on the back and as the base. So there's a huge contact area. You can imagine have a double-sided tape, so it's very easy to attach. And then we switched to soft material, so it's deformable, so the user can actually push a button to trigger the interface behind it. And for legibility, we tried out different combinations of the using PLA plastic and NinjaFlex, etc. So for the first one on the top left corner, it's using all NinjaFlex, and the second one to the fourth one, we actually tried out to print the braille dots using the PLA to try to maybe it's have a high resolution. But we found out it easily break because it's two different materials, so the braille dots will fall off. So we later tried to print out a few layers of the buttons and then the braille dots. But later, so also in the middle one, the top row, that's the legend we can print out for the blind users. So although in the third iteration we improved the braille dot design, like the shape of the braille dots, and actually the NinjaFlex version is already good enough for the blind people to read. So all of our user study, we use NinjaFlex, and also only use the left one. But we later also tried out different materials and ordered some models printed from 3D Hubs and using NinjaFlex, SemiFlex material. And you can see on the other two images, they have a much higher braille quality. So we then performed a user study with 11 blind participants, and the study included each step that the blind user needs to do in Facade. So we had two goals for the evaluation. One is to understand whether Facade can help them independently augment appliance interfaces. And I'll quickly go through the study results. So attaching the dollar bill from a scale of like very hard to very easy, 1 to 5, and participants found it was very easy to perform. And for taking photos, they were neutral on the difficulty of how to take photos. The reason why it wasn't easy was mainly because they need to hold the phone stable, and also the system didn't give them real feedback of where the interface is, so they have to figure it out later. And using the photos taken by the participants, we found the cross-sourcing pipeline was fast, accurate, and cheap. And participants also rated relatively easy to attach the overlay. So the second goal is to evaluate how effective the overlay is. And we first asked the participants to read out each label on the overlay, and they found reading the braille letters are easy. And we then asked the participants to locate the button and press the button. And for number pads, we actually are using a different shape than the other function pads, so we don't need to put the actual number in braille on the button. And it was quite effective that they only spent about 1 second to find the button and push it. And they also found it very easy to locate other buttons as well. So participants also were able to use the overlay to perform a cooking task, which includes a sequence of button pushes, like to defrost frozen chicken. So please see more details of the paper, the study results in the paper. So here's another example of our participants performing the cooking task with the Facade overlay.
Wait, defrost 3-5 start.
So participants compared Facade with the traditional method of applying braille labels, and one user commented, I like Facade much better, I can do it myself, to me it's huge. I don't need to wait for someone to come over and label things for me. If the templates get damaged, then I can create a new one. And with the traditional labels, I make things get peeled off pretty soon. So I think this is neat. So compared with traditional embossed labelers, Facade does not require in-person sighted assistance. They provide richer tactile feedback using the different mediums and shapes, and reduces memory load by providing with in-app support and the legend on the side. while the traditional embossed labeling does none of these. So overall, participants were excited about the facade concept, and several asked how and when they can use it on their own appliances. So quickly about future work. So currently we focus on flat interface with, but later we can extend it to work with other kinds of interface elements such as mechanical knobs or non-flat interface. So you can imagine using like doing a scan to figure out the depth information, and also for touchscreens, so like using capacitive materials. So we envision facade approach can work at scale. So for example, for a sited partner or a building manager, they can quickly collect images and automatically produce these labels and to make like a building or a space more accessible very quickly, which is more efficient and scalable way than manual labeling. And this is towards making the world more textually accessible. To summarize, we have presented facade, a crowdsourced verification pipeline for blind people to independently produce tactile overlays for physical interfaces. Thanks for your attention, and I'll open the questions.
Beautiful talk. Do we have some questions?
Cindy Arnett at the University of Louisville. Quick question. How did you get the edge of the battery? I thought that it would be difficult to attach this to the mesh sealer.
So for this specific microwave, there is actually like a raised part for the control panel. So when we asked the crowd to label the interface, they actually like aligned with that edge, so the blind people can feel that. But some other participants also mentioned, like for example, if it's completely flat, like you could just use the size of the interface to help with that. Or also for this raised one, they could have like a concave part, so it's easier to fit. Yeah, so there are some other strategies you can apply to help with better attachment. And another thing is, you can basically think of this as a way, like your keyboard and operator. So that would be the perfect material if you have like real dots on it and can be produced, especially for the interface like printers and stuff that already have like these buttons, but just they cannot read it. Right? Thank you.
Hello, Tim Simon, Georgia Tech. I just have a quick clarification question. I was just wondering how you went from the crowdsourced labels to the Braille, and particularly if you encountered any problems with the function button name lengths, because for instance in Braille, the word power probably would run off the button, so I just wondered how you truncated them.
Yeah. So for this, we in the customization interface, they have an approach to choose the abbreviation strategy. So for example, for baked potato, it's impossible to put the whole thing. So they can choose to BP or like whatever thing, PO for them to have a member potato or something like that. And also you can print the legend on the side, so BP and baked potato. So like on the side of the microwave, they can feel that. But there is the limitation of if the button is really small, like a remote control, then it's too small to put any tactile overlay. So there are a couple of situations. So one is for some interfaces that are not as cluttered, you can actually put the text on the side and you can include more. Or some people mentioned what they are doing already in their home is if their washer is very hard to label, they will just have a full simulation of the interface and the legend on the side. So use that and to fill the interface. But the interface has to be raised and have some knobs on the side.
Oh, very nice, thank you.
Hi, Carol, I was just wondering, I saw in your app, it looked like you had Braille symbols and letters. Have you done any testing with the non-Braille labeling?
Yeah. So in the user study, we have one participant who doesn't read Braille. So, but he also, I think he used the embossed letter one mostly. So in so in this picture, we have a bunch of different approaches. Like in the bottom row, we have using embossed letters, and also there are related work that people are actually designing universal tactile icons for people to recognize. So those can also be applied.
Thank you.
Thanks again.